Hey, what's up, good people? How you doing? Welcome back to Stock Up with Larry Jones. Go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell right now. Today, we're going to talk to the CEO of CleanSpark, one of the largest and actually more profitable right now Bitcoin mining companies in the world. Okay, so let's go right into it. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell, and your notification is checked. Now let's get into this interview. Hey, what's up, good people? How you doing? As you can see, I have my friend Zach, the CEO of CleanSpark, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll go right into it. Zach, would you please give him your full name and talk a little bit about your company?
Yeah, I'm Zach Bradford, CEO of CleanSpark. We're one of the largest Bitcoin miners that self-mines in the U.S. We have, data centers throughout Georgia, and we recently acquired 3 in Mississippi, along with a partner facility up in New York. Ultimately, we are pushing out over 17 exahash actually at the moment, and looking forward to a great year ahead of us.
That's great. That's great. Hey, thank you. For those of you that don't know, this is his second time here on the show. We were supposed to talk like a month from now. He stopped his travel. He rearranged his itinerary just to be here with us. So let's leave some hearts for Zach. We appreciate you for making this time. There's a lot of questions, especially now that the halving is upon us. Okay. So I'm going to start with some questions and get right into it. CleanSpark is one of the Bitcoin miners that is up this year to date. Actually, when I go year to date, you guys are the only one that's green out of the larger market cap Bitcoin miners. Could you explain why?
Well, we've been hard at work is probably the main way, but we started the year, right around 10 exahash, and we have pushed all the way up to 17, and we're on our way to 20. So we are on a trajectory to more than double our operating capacity and therefore our Bitcoin production by the end of June. So this all comes from a lot of preparation over the past 18 months to get here, but this 6 month period has been a pretty big one for us, and we actually have some big plans leading into the end of the year. Optimally, what we're going to do is look to actually triple from where we started at the beginning of the year.
Wow. That's a big jump. One of the things I got to tell you, Zach, is we have a lot of people that talk not in Bitcoin mining areas, but other type of companies. There's a lot of CEOs that just talk and not performed. I have to take my hat off to you, Zach. You said what you're going to do, and you did it. And that's what people. That's what I appreciate about you, and the stock price reflects that. So thanks for being a straight shooter and taking our questions. So every
I appreciate.
210, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I appreciate that. It's something that we really do value. Our position on is, if we're going to say we're going to do it, we absolutely follow through and do it.
Exactly. You bag it up. You got the receipts, as we say. So about what every 210,000 blocks, you guys, the rewards are getting cut in half, right? What is CleanSpark going to do to generate revenue so that your stock price, of course, will reflect?
You know, I think what's important is we were thinking about what happened last week, 3.5 years before it actually occurred. So everything we did to make sure our revenue was sound, has already been taken care of in the past. And what we've done is we've made sure we own and operate our own facilities first. That gives us full flexibility and control in how we operate. We then filled it with highly effective machines and highly trained individuals to run those facilities. That's ultimately resulted in one of the highest uptimes of any of the miners. And of course, a miner is only as valuable as it's actually producing something. Otherwise it's just dead capital sitting on a shelf. And so, being at 99% plus uptime is always our goal, and it's what we've been delivering on. So that makes it so that even though the ultimate rewards got cut in half for the base reward, I should say, um, we're still capturing absolutely as much of it as we can. We also wanted to make sure we were not a miner that had to shut off any of our machines, because if you have to shut off machines and they go somewhere else, you're dead in the water. So we actually expect to benefit when some of the miners that will have machines they have to turn off, the pie stays the same size. Our piece just gets bigger. So that's been our focus.
So since supply is more limited now, and I think what if we keep at the pace we are, we'll be like 116 or so years, 114 to 16 years before all of the 21 million Bitcoin are mined, correct?
Correct.
Um, now that now that the halving is really getting serious, meaning the amount that is mined, what do you think is different this cycle than past cycles? We do know that we hit all-time highs. We surpassed 2021 highs this cycle, and we know that we have a lot of the spot ETF, all of the big buying in from companies like BlackRock, et cetera. What do you think is different this cycle, and what do you think are the pros and cons of what's different?
I think the biggest thing is the a macro event, which is really ETFs, right? All that
Hmm.
buying that's come in, and that's a lot of Bitcoin to buy and sit on a shelf instead of
Yes.
churn and trade. And so the supply is definitely limited in a new way from like a base supply point of view. And then, of course, on a daily basis, only half the amount of Bitcoin gets produced. So we should see a supply and demand, effect happen on the Bitcoin price as we go. That should push it up, on a long-term basis. Of course, if you take your time horizon, you think really short, it's
Right.
it's going to look really volatile. It's all about the trajectory over the next 4 years. Now, when you put that in perspective of what is that really going to mean, first I would say take a long time horizon. Second, though, I think for miners, our time horizons are measured day by day. We're either making money on a Tuesday or we're not, and it's about being on all those Tuesdays. And I think that in order for that to happen, it's about scale. I really think that as we go into this cycle, what's going to be different is we're really graduating. Last cycle developed the industrial mining model, right? There was
Right.
now enough adoption and use of Bitcoin industrial miners could exist, and they developed in the last 4 years. Now in this one, it's about if you don't have scale, scale means something different. You have to be able to absorb all of your base cost in order to get more capital, and more capital begets more mining and therefore more capital. And so I really think that the consolidation and or dying off events that will happen for a lot of miners, I think there'll be consolidation to where there's only four large scale industrial publicly traded miners that are very successful. There's going to be
Yes.
stragglers, but
Right.
there's going to be very few names that are really supporting big market caps and that continue to build at the scale and size that we're talking about, has become the norm over the last couple of years.
I talk a lot about that on this show. I do. And I talk about, of course, all miners are not created equal. Of course, the ones that won't make it will get swallowed up by the bigger companies. You guys, let's talk a little bit about M&A. What are you guys doing in the area of M&A?
That's a big thing we've been talking about for, off and on. We've always been really active in it. Mississippi was our most recent one. But, at the beginning of this month, we did put out a press release. We talked about, we were set up to pursue this. We do expect M&A opportunities to continue to build on a post-halving basis. What we're targeting is facilities that are either full or were full of old machines that are no longer profitable, or that are maybe just barely breaking even. Because we have another 100+ thousand machines on the way. We step into the facility, the old owner can take the machines, they can sell the machines, and we're really looking for empty shelves. And we expect that as some pain is felt in the market, the valuations will approach optimal area, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to be had. With that said, the public companies merging together, I think, is going to be a slow process. I think that there hasn't been enough pain for the valuations to be where they should be, right? There's still a lot of euphoria built into some of the small miner stocks. And once that kind of squeezes out, I do think you'll see public miners that will get gobbled up, small public miners gobbled up by the larger miners like ourselves. I
Right.
think that's going to be a longer gap, whereas the private stuff that's out there, it's ready to go now, and it's just about making deals close.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So when, let's just say down the road, the bigger companies swallow up the little companies, will do you see that it moving over to something like Clean Spark? Let's say you consolidate a smaller company that didn't make it. Will you allow that company to still operate under the company name, or will you just consolidate it and it now becomes Clean Spark?
We would do the former. We would consolidate. So,
Hmm.
what I think part of the reason we've been successful is what we internally call the Clean Spark way.
Hmm.
And in order for the Clean Spark way to exist, I think everybody operates under the same name. Everybody's wearing the same ball caps and the same, shirts. That brings the team camaraderie together
Right.
where you're information sharing and you're being collaborative. I think if because we have had this conversation, the reason we wouldn't let a company continue to exist under the old name is it can create unhealthy competition instead of collaboration. So we actually think it's a big deal to basically bring the entire team together on the same page, and that happens first with the name on the shirt.
Other than higher transaction fees and your block rewards, what other ways are you making money?
That's actually something I think differentiates us from some of the other miners. Some of the other miners are out there and they're trying to get into software and firmware and all these different pieces. We
Yep.
are not doing that. We are staying laser focused on being the very best large scale Bitcoin miner. Now, that doesn't mean there are opportunities
Right.
to kind of juice the revenue a little bit in the sense of, uptime. But secondly, we've been talking about this for a while, which is launching a trading desk. And what I mean by that, only our Bitcoin. We would go out there and we generate some yield on it. We think that that's a great way, whether we're selling covered calls or we're hedging the downside risk or we're buying future calls out there instead of buying just Bitcoin directly.
Hmm.
But ultimately, that is going to be built on a strategy of, why buy a Bitcoin miner, which is because we can get Bitcoin cheaper than spot. So that'll always be kind of the foundation for what we do. And we're just going to find ways to build on it. We'd been saying that we were going to wait until after halving to launch
Hmm.
that trading desk. And
Yeah.
so now we're after halving, and it's time to start looking at it a lot closer.
So you guys could get Bitcoin cheaper than spot. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, what we mean by that is instead of just buying Bitcoin out in the market, the only place to get Bitcoin below spot is when you mine it, because our all-in cost to mine is lower than spot. That's how we're, of course, profitable.
Right.
So even on a post-halving basis, if we can, mine Bitcoin, I think our latest numbers that we have that are public around $40,000, a little over $40,000
Correct.
per coin after halving. With Bitcoin right now in the mid 60s and hopefully on its way up, that's a lot of margin. But that's really what we do as a business is we're really just buying Bitcoin by buying energy, by paying salaries, and we ultimately get Bitcoin out of it.
So I know you're not the CEO of Grayscale. Let's talk about the outflows of
Yeah.
Grayscale. Okay. Now it has hurt the price of Bitcoin. I think the timing of it was actually perfect. I would personally rather that it happened before the halving. But the outflows have been tremendous based on the compared to the inflows. Could you elaborate a little bit for those that don't know why they had to sell so much? I know there's this. This is probably an unfair question, but it just came to my head.
No, no, it's great.
Yeah.
Um, Grayscale, for those of your listeners who don't know, it was really the first place where you could go buy Bitcoin that worked almost like an ETF, right? But it wasn't an ETF. And so, but they really pushed hard on the legal process to make ETFs a thing. Now they made a decision because in the last few days before the ETFs came out, there was basically a price war. Because what usually happens for any ETF that gets established is there's one or two ETFs that really own the majority of the market. And BlackRock knows that out, as did Fidelity's, as did everybody's. So they started basically bidding each other down, and they ended up in a situation where, everybody was down to, half a point fee. And Grayscale said, we're not going to participate in that. They kept a fee that was, I believe, 1.5%. So triple everybody else's fee.
Yes.
And that's just for holding the asset.
Right.
Now, I think that this was, unfortunate because they had so much brand value that had already been put out there. If they just matched fees with everybody else, they would still be the biggest ETF, and inflows probably would have gone that way. So why did they do it? That's a question we'd have to ask Barry, their CEO. But ultimately, I think it's this. I think that they knew, with all the pressure that they've had, and their sister companies and parent companies are, having a hard time financially, they needed to maximize, the profit from that to support other things, even at the expense of what was going to ultimately be their ETF's, long-term position. So unfortunate, but that means that there's a lot more people selling. A portion of that is going into the other ETFs, but you have a gap. The trade dates. You have T+3 trade dates for many of these ETFs, meaning they have to have your money long enough to clear the bank account to go buy the Bitcoin. So there's a big gap there, and that allows a little bit of churn to happen in Bitcoin. And you got to know that BlackRock's smart, and they've got to be playing a hedge fund game on the off to the side and other things.
Yep.
So it's unfortunately created an opportunity to the downside of Bitcoin. Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I like about you, Zach. Zach is like, keep it real. I like that.
Yeah.
See, you know what? A lot of my followers, I have some very smart people that follow me, but then I have a lot of new investors, right? And we just want people to keep it real, because the price action of your stock is going to reflect the truth in the end. And so, I'm glad you said what you said about that company. We'll just leave it at that. All right.
Yeah.
What's on the horizon for CleanSpark? I know that, we talked about M&A, and I had a specific question about miners. If you buy another company and they have the old miners, I heard you say that you're looking for shelf space. Are you looking for shelf space to replace it with newer miners? And then talk about what's on the horizon for CleanSpark.
Yeah, so we have a very large agreement with Bitmain, where we have the very latest S21 Pro miners coming. So the most efficient, most powerful. We have 100,000 of those coming between June and December of this year. And so we, of course, have our own shelves filled up with highly efficient miners. Now we're going to be doing some upgrading. We're actually in the process of upgrading some of our, fleet, which are still profitable miners, but we're going to sell them out into the market and put in the very latest and greatest. For example, the S19J Pro, still making us money today, but that means it has a resale value still. So we've had those miners for 2 to 3 years. We'll sell them to another, party, slide in the very latest, S21s. That process, we're only going to use a portion of the miners. So the rest of the miners that are coming online, about 140,000 of the 160 total that we ordered, that's going to be going on new shelves. Now we have some of that being built right now. For example, we've talked about, we're just waiting on a transformer in Sandersville for 50 megawatts, which will be about 14,000 miners that'll go online with that. We expect that to happen sometime this quarter. And then it leaves us, the rest of those. We expect the majority of those shelves to come from, we're going to do a little bit of building still for the rest of the year.
Right.
But a large portion of that we expect to come through M&A. And that's the difference. If we can plug in all the miners that we have, we'll have over 50 exahash. And, we'll have all the miners to do it by the end of the year. But we expect that it's going to take a little longer to build, have the shelves. We'd rather have the miners ready to go, but that still puts us on track to be over 30 exahash by the end of the year. And remember, we're at 17 right now. So we still have a ton of growth ahead of us, but we feel really confident about the ability to basically acquire sites because we can see the landscape of what exists out there between now and the end of the year.
Hey, family, if you want to learn more about making money with crypto, whether it be meme coins, altcoins, or Bitcoin, you want to click the top link below, that's Stock Up You. Come and join thousands as you learn crypto, all about crypto, how to make money, what the entire ecosystem does, all of this. It's covered. Invest in yourself first and then invest in stocks and crypto. All right, back to the show. So, um, pretty much done with new miners coming on, right? It wouldn't be a good invest. It would be difficult for an upstart, a miner, to be profitable at this point. Would you not agree?
I think the barriers to entry are incredibly high. So
Yes.
somebody could absolutely go buy a site. They
Hmm.
could go buy the brand new miners. But, a problem you're going to have is, our buying power comes from the order size. I think our all-in order size approaches 700 million on the latest batch. That
Hmm.
got us the very lowest price in the entire market. A retail buyer that goes and buys that miner will usually be looking at paying anywhere from 30 to 50% more to buy 10 of them instead of 160,000.
Wow.
And as a result, you think about what a miner's for. Whatever you pay for it, you want to hash back in Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin was, let's just say the price stays flat, it
Right.
would take the owner of that miner, 50% longer to bring all that capital back in.
Yeah.
That 50% is measured in months or even a year. And as a result, your payback timing and the risk reward on that is a
Hmm.
lot more difficult. And that's why I think the barrier to entry is just so much higher. To get into it, someone's really going to need to be thinking about, in my opinion, like tens of thousands of miners, and that would be a small miner now, considering that the big guys like us,
Hmm.
we're likely going to approach 200,000 miners by the end of the year.
That's crazy. Hey, what do you think about? Of course, we know energy costs is just like your one of your biggest costs, right?
Mhm.
Are you guys thinking of something more natural, or what do you guys see? I know you're getting newer, more energy efficient equipment, but what about energy? What do you see? What do you see? Uh, let's say in the next 5 years, energy. Are you looking more to solar, or anything that's going to cut your costs down?
Yeah, anything that cuts costs down, of course, is a
Hmm.
place to look. We're very open to seeing what I think opportunities are going to come. There's a lot of exciting technology.
Hmm.
One of the things we really like the idea of, although I think we're maybe a few years out still.
Hmm.
Maybe this is next halving and later,
Okay.
but the small scale reactors, the SMRs, a lot of conversations about those going on. But if those can become a reality, you end up with a small nuclear reactor that takes, less than 8 years to build, as opposed to what we love in Georgia right now, which is nuclear power. But you talk about Plant Vogtle took 30 years to build and was billions over budget.
Hmm.
So that carbon-free, low-cost power, we're big fans of in nuclear. So I think there's a path to get there. Now, in between that, there's a lot of interesting things. Whether it's solar farms, there's opportunities where solar farms are built, and the backlog to connect to the grid can sometimes be 3 years. So it'd be really great. We could go drop some containers. We could plug in. We could be there even temporarily. For us, could still be measured in years before it gets grid connected. And then optimally, we're still interconnecting with the grid at that point. Now, there's pros and cons and all these different things. If you do that
Hmm.
with a solar farm not grid connected, you're only mining when the sun's up. And so we would probably take maybe old gen machines, put them to use there because the power is so cheap. You
Right.
keep them around and you keep the really efficient stuff grid connected and capable of mining 24/7, 365. So we're just open, but we're not going to pursue building a new technology. We would rather partner with best in class providers because R&D budgets can get really expensive,
Right.
and when you think of capital, we want our capital to be used the best way for our shareholders, and we think that that's directly going into mining. But if any of your listeners have cool energy projects or ideas, we'd love to hear about them because we think that Bitcoin miners are the perfect anchor tenant for a new project because
Yeah.
we want to sit there and we want to use not some of the energy, but all of it that can be produced on a new green, clean technology.
Hey, let's speak to the naysayers that say Bitcoin is just going to go to zero because what's going to happen is these miners, because they're getting paid half in rewards, they won't be able to survive. And then they're all going to go to zero. Hence, no one is mining the Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is going to zero. I know you are probably sick and tired of hearing that argument. What do you have to say to that?
The algorithm is quite elegant in how it's built to reward efficiency and reward our continued participation in the blockchain. Miners are the backstop of Bitcoin. But just like I mentioned, the pie gets bigger. So how does it get bigger? Difficulty adjusts. If there's less miners mining, difficulty goes down, which means it's easier for a large scale miner like us to get
Why?
more Bitcoin.
Why?
Well,
Why to that question? Why does it get easier if there's less miners?
because all the miners were competing for a block, and how
Hmm.
the algorithm adjusts is it wants to have a block mined every 10 minutes. The reality is sometimes it takes 11 minutes, sometimes it takes 9 minutes. And when you go through that process of 9 minutes to 11 minutes, when the algorithm finds out, hey, it took 11 minutes, it got too hard, which means there's not enough miners mining to get it at that level,
Hmm.
it makes it easier. So how does it get easier? We're all trying to guess a string of numbers and letters. It
Right.
just shortens it a little bit. And so
Ah,
right now difficulty is 86 trillion, which I'm not going to get overly technical, but that's basically
thank you.
measuring the difficulty to get in and actually hash a block.
Wow.
It used to be down, much easier to get there. If you took the processing power today on old difficulty, we'd be mining blocks every 30 seconds. And so that's how it self adjusts to keep efficiency at the top and also to disincentivize non energy efficient miners. You don't want to incentivize them to lose money.
Right.
And so it makes it easier though for those who are playing a really efficient game. And so again, it's just built in. It was really well thought out, and that's why Bitcoin really is, the leading blockchain algorithm, and ultimately coin to be part of.
Thanks for answering that. That is awesome answer because anyway, I couldn't explain it the way you could being the CEO of actually the best performing a Bitcoin mining company. Can we dream a little bit? All right. So now, and I don't mean just loosely dreaming, right? Where do you see? I'm going to ask a heavy question, right? Right now, Bitcoin seems to be, at the time of filming this, in a position of indecision, whether it wants to go up or down, the price of Bitcoin, right? I believe you and I eventually know that it is going up, right? It's not going to be a straight line up. Within the next 12 to 18 months in this crypto cycle, can you give me I'll make it easy. Can you give me a bear case and a bull case of price? Let's say bull case is whatever you think it could be, and then a bear case of what you think it could be. Give me a little juice. Give me a little meat for the people.
It's always a loaded question, but again, I think
Yes,
we can all have our opinions on this. Whether they're right or wrong is to be proven. What I can
correct.
say is our strategy for now, we started last June to really quit selling Bitcoin and stacking it up. It's because we believe it's on a trajectory up, and so far we've been proven correct when you measure, last June to here. On a long time horizon, or medium term time horizon, I should say, you
Hmm.
know, 12 to 18 months, I think that Bitcoin will approach, 250,000
Mm.
on a bull case. I think there's
Hmm.
lots of macroeconomic,
Of
impacts that
course,
could
black
affect
swan
that.
events.
Yeah, yeah, make it go up, make it go down.
Hmm.
I think on a bear case scenario, I think, we could retrace, 30% from where we're at, but I think that there's very strong support. Um, One of the key things I think, though, if you look and really study the cycle, And I think it's a lesson in, not overplaying your hand.
Hmm.
But, when Bitcoin usually peaks during the cycle, it retraces and it retraces, usually pretty heavily,
Yes.
anywhere from 50 to 80% from wherever the peak was. And I think we're going to see the same thing. So, our goal as a company is to time it the best we can, protect our downside. We're big believers in the upside of Bitcoin. But, I do think that we're going to see it go up and then retrace back before it goes back up again in the next cycle. And, we plan to grow on a counter cyclical nature. We think that, you know, grow now is always the better answer. But there's
Hmm.
going to be a point at some point in this cycle,
Yeah.
just like it did last cycle. It'll no
Right.
longer make sense to pay the expense for the growth for anybody that's trying to catch up, because we plan to be well ahead. And we're
Yeah.
just going to level out and set in and wait for the bear cases to roll back in and then go buy distressed assets again. So that's really our
Hmm.
plan. So we plan to benefit Bitcoin on the bull cycle, and we
Right.
plan to benefit the infrastructure side during the bear cycle, just like we did over the last cycle again. So it's
Yeah.
hopefully upside on both ways.
So you're kind of in the on a bull case. Of course, anything we say is not a suggestion to buy, hold, or
Yeah,
sell. These are
yeah,
just guesstimation. When you
yes.
guess and estimate, guesstimate. All right. so so then it kind of lines up with what the CEO of Mara said and what Kathy Wood said and what I think that by the end of next cycle, not this cycle, by the peak of next cycle, we could see a $500,000 Bitcoin in the next
I,
6 years or so.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think that, on that trajectory, if you can take a long time horizon, like we have the opportunity to do as a company, um, you know, I think that that's our goal, is take the very long time horizons when it relates to the Bitcoin on our balance sheet. Use it in between the cycles to, use Bitcoin to turn into more Bitcoin is what we do as a miner, how we think about it. But we're currently in a hold strategy because we do think there's a lot of upside ahead of us.
And I will end by saying this: if CleanSpark is one of the companies that's still around, and it sounds like you guys will be, the price of CleanSpark could be really good at the top of next cycle. I'll just say that myself. So I don't want you to say it. You're the CEO, so you
I,
can't say
I
it. I'll
wish it
say it
could.
for
I'm too I'm not impartial enough, so I'm gonna leave it to you.
you. Hey, Zach, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I just want you to have the parting words and let my audience know anything you want them to know.
I would say go check us out on social media. Check out our website. Do the research. We're really excited about the growth prospects that we have ahead of us. And for those of you who are shareholders, thank you for trusting us on this journey. And we're looking forward to what the next cycle has to bring. And then, we're already thinking about the 2028 halving and getting ready for it now.
Hey, you and I are going to be attending a conference together. We talked about it before we went live. Uh, is it cool if we hooked up and did a live interview? I don't mean live, but I interviewed you live while we're at the conference.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Look forward to it. I think you're referring to the Bitcoin mining conference in
Yes,
Nashville. Should
yes,
be a lot of
Nashville.
fun.
Cool, cool in the gang. You heard it right here, good people. Listen, stay tuned. You guys know that this is brought to you by Stock Up You, where we teach you guys about the miners, Bitcoin, and everything. That's going to be the top link below. Mr. Zach Bradford, the CEO of CleanSpark. It is always an honor and a privilege to have you here. We will see you next time, good people. Live, love, laugh, and learn.